Life Audio.
Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, your authority in navigating the world of homeschooling diverse learners. Featuring Peggy Ployhar from SPED Homeschool, Annie Yorty from AnnieYorty.com, Leilani Melendez from Living with Eve, Stephanie Buckwalter from eLARP Learning, and Dawn Jackson from Dawn Jackson Educational Consulting and Tutoring. With over 75 years of combined homeschooling expertise, experiences, and perspectives, this group is eager to share their wealth of wisdom to empower your homeschooling journey. So grab your favorite mug, settle in, and get ready for insightful discussions, valuable insights, and practical tips as these experts and their guests dive into the hottest topics in homeschooling. Whether you're a seasoned homeschooler, just considering this path, or anywhere in between, you don't want to miss a minute of these enlightening conversations that will empower your child to thrive in their homeschool environment. Empowering Homeschool Conversations is starting right now. Join us to give your homeschool the power boost it needs to successfully educate the unique learners in your home.
Today, we are going to talk about beyond words, how learning a second language can transform struggling learners. And my guest today is Suzanne Gose. She is a former public school teacher who transitioned to homeschooling over 20 years ago when she decided to stay home with her firstborn. She quickly realized how much she missed teaching. Reaching out to her local community to offer small Spanish class, Suzanne was met with an overwhelming interest, 42 responses by the next morning. Since then, she has spent 23 years public speaking and teaching Spanish to homeschool students in the classroom setting. Suzanne is happily married, mother of 5, a small business owner, and the founder and board member of Community Homeschool Center. She and her family enjoy life on their 15-acre farm in Central Texas. Passionate about supporting the homeschooling community, Suzanne loves teaching Spanish weekly, helping families in their homeschooling journey, and maintaining a happy, well-organized home. I wish I could say I had a well-organized home. Welcome, Suzanne. I'm glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, a very organized husband. So having a Marine that's organized makes things organized.
Yes. I can say I'm organized in places. Just don't look behind my cupboard doors.
Absolutely.
Because they are not organized. Well, I'm glad to have you on the show. Actually, Suzanne and I were chatting before the show started. You were one of my first guests on, at that time it was called SPED Homeschool Conversations, which then we've rebranded to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. But back in 2018, you were on the show. So I'm glad to have you back finally.
I'm so happy to be here. A lot has changed, but a lot stayed the same. So we can help a lot of people this way.
Yep, definitely. I have learned through experience. I always told my son when I started this show, I'm like, you've got to be kidding. You want me to actually interview people? I have no idea how to do that. You learn by experience. Let me just put it that way. If you think that I always started out this way, no, did not. So, and yeah, it sounds like your jump into, teaching Spanish and all of that was kind of a shock as well. It wasn't something you had planned. Can you tell us a little bit of that story and how that came about and just how you got launched into helping homeschoolers with Spanish?
Sure. So I was a public school teacher, like you said, and when we had our firstborn, I wanted to stay home with them, and I didn't want him in daycare, and so I was planning, okay, I'll stay home with the baby, and then put him in kindergarten, like you do, and
right.
I really was bored. Like that baby was just like not doing flashcards or anything, and so I just had heard about these people called homeschoolers, and I thought, well, maybe they need a Spanish tutor or something, so I got on their little Google. Well, back then it was Yahoo groups. And so
that's when I started homeschooling too. Yes.
Yeah. So I sent that out, and the next morning I had 42 responses, which back then was a lot of emails. And
yes.
So I had a little meeting at a local church and said, would anybody like a class? And people started writing me checks. My husband was there with a little receipt book looking at me like, people will pay you to teach? Like what? Because in our head, you if you wanted to teach, you taught in the public school. And so it just
Right.
never occurred to us because we have been in the system. And so once I started teaching homeschoolers, it was just like, oh, these kids are really different. And so I
Yeah.
wanted our baby, at the time he was 9 months old. And I thought, I really want my baby to turn out like these teenagers, because I didn't know teenagers came that way. Like, I thought they only came, like, I didn't know.
Exactly.
I thought they just came kind of sullen and sad and sort of introverted and kind of grunted only to adults. I didn't know they were engaging young adults that cared about you as a human. And so it was amazing. So that day I turned into a homeschooler, and then 4 more babies. Three have launched, and we have 2 left to graduate. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
So
it's amazing how just certain things in your journey just flip, your path. And, but I have the same experience, with homeschoolers now that I teach at my studio. They just catch on so much faster, and they are more engaging. They actually push themselves more than I see the students in the typical classroom. They've been taught how to, learn at the pace of everybody else versus just, pursuing where they are. It's their sweet spot. They seem to just hone into that. So,
right. There's a lot of conditioning, I think, when no matter where you are, if you're somewhere for 8 hours a day, you're going to be conditioned. Whether it's a good condition or a bad condition, it's still a conditioning. And so I think we need to remember as homeschoolers, like, what are we conditioning our children, and which way?
Right.
A good way. So, it's not like bad or good. It's just something that you can't avoid. And just think about what that environment is for your child, and then for us too. So there's always challenge to look at what are we getting used to, and is that something good to get used to, or should we challenge that?
Right. Yeah, that's so true. And we control that environment. Yeah.
Yes.
So when I talked to you last, we actually met in person recently, and you were telling me that you had some aha moments with some students that you had recently, or families that had recently used your curriculum with students who had struggled. And I would love for you to share one of those stories with our community, because I think it's encouraging, because a lot of times we think learning a second language is just, we just don't have enough time because we have to keep pushing those things that our students struggle in. But, but I learned through homeschooling my own kids that that's not always the best approach. So I'd love to hear your stories about that.
Yeah. So back when I started my little small classes, I would have people sign up their advanced child, or their that kind of type A, their firstborn kind of natured kid. Oh, we have extra time, or we have extra money, so let's push this kid into Spanish classes and kind of give them extra, maybe to challenge them or something like that. And then they would have kids that were struggling in whatever reason, visual processing, dyslexia, audio, memory issues, whatever it is. And they would not sign their kids up for Spanish because of those reasons.
Right.
And I was really surprised by that, because I was like, no, because even back then I knew there's so much brain health that learning a second language can do. And so if your child struggles with memory, that's when you do put them in a second language. For, Spanish makes the most sense just because it's the most commonly spoken language other than English in America. But if your kid is interested in any other language, just having them use that part of their brain will improve everything else. So the biggest aha moment for me was just a couple of years ago. We've been doing this 20 years. So a couple of years ago is quite a short amount of time. But I had a mom that had gotten, I have the little flashcards here. This is the flashcard her little boy learned from. I like it, but in Spanish, me gusta. And she emailed me and she said, hey, I wanted to tell you, my child said his first word today. And I was like, that's awesome. She went on a paragraph. My child said me gusta, and it's his first word. And I was like, fantastic. Good job. Keep going. And she emailed me back. She's like, I don't think you understand. He's nonverbal. He has autism. He's nonverbal. He has literally never spoken a word to me. It's just sounds and syllables. But he pointed at an apple, a real life apple on the countertop, and said, me gusta. And she was like, yeah. And so that was huge. That's like, to me, that's like the best, I think that's the best story I'll ever get. Maybe there'll be another one, but I think using a different part of the brain, there's no pressure to sound like mom or to say it exactly right. And whenever you're learning with flashcards, something that can't be measured, like you're always behind or ahead with math. You're always behind or ahead with reading. With learning a language,
exactly,
you're not on a 6th grade level or an 80th grade level. You're just learning a new language. And so I think a lot of the pressure taking off, as well as the brain health, really makes a big difference where we don't think of it. We don't realize that background work that happens when you're learning a second language. It's so important, especially for struggling learners. Not, I don't know. I just want people to focus on that's when you go around and do the extra stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And that's really interesting to point out, because I think we think there's a singular way to deliver information, and that curriculum is the ultimate way of proper delivery. And yet those experiences that our kids have and those moments where they can interact with learning and kind of make it fun and do something different, or just, not have it so under pressure, like you were talking about. That's when we do get more aha moments from them. And,
as soon as we relax, everything opens up. And it's with us too, right? As soon as we relax, it's like, oh, all I needed to do was relax. But how do you tell somebody to relax? As soon as you tell somebody to relax, they're like, oh, what's about to happen? So the game-like feeling of learning words, and it's like, it's just a game. It's, I achieved the next level. We play video games, we play board games, and we go, we got to the next level. And so that endorphin, that excitement of, I learned a new word, even if you can't say it, if you can hear it and point at it, that's a synapse. That's opening a part of the brain that before that moment simply was not open. You cannot wake up the foreign language part of the brain. It's right up here any other way except by communicating.
Wow.
Yeah. So it just stays dead and shriveled in. It's okay. You use other parts, but imagine if you have a part here that is just kind of in the way. And so when your child gets backed into a corner from dyslexia or visual or any kind of processing issue, and they're there's nowhere for them to go. A foreign language is like having a secret door. They back up and they go, oh, wait. And the brain has this other pathway that wasn't there before and isn't there for monolingual students.
We will continue this conversation after a short break.
This December on the Salvation Army's Words of Life podcast, we'll be joined by worship leader, pastor, speaker, April Christina Farmer. She joins our host, Bernie Dake, to share her testimony as the two discuss the importance of living life with a grateful heart.
Now, just hearing the stories from my husband, because there's so much I don't remember, was the people of God. The investments that you make down through the years in those relationships and the body of Christ that you build relationship with, they came together and they prayed for me. And people feel that all the time, like, how in the world? Why would you let this person go? Why would you let me walk through that? Why would you allow this sickness to overtake my body? And Jesus is like, I know it's tough, but you don't know what's coming. I do. Will you trust me?
Listen to the Salvation Army's Words of Life wherever you listen to podcasts, or visit wordsoflifepodcast.org.
Hey friends, Sadie Rob Huff here, and I am so excited to tell you about my new book, The Next Step, 50 Devotions to Find Your Way Forward. If you're like me, you've probably had times in your life when you felt stuck, like you were unable to change direction from your current path or unsure where you would even go if you could change course. Well, even in these moments, it's so important for us to know that we're never not moving. We're always moving towards something. I wrote The Next Step for anyone who is searching for God's purpose in their life or guidance in the season that they're in. Inside, we'll walk together through 10 weeks of devotion centered on the wisdom books of the Bible, and I'm going to share practical ideas for steps that you can take in your walk with God each day. This book is filled with scripture, reflection prompts, and even some of my favorite worship songs for you to listen to as you go about your days. I'm so excited for you to start your journey. You can get your copy of The Next Step in print, audiobook, or ebook now at Amazon or anywhere books are sold.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.
That is so cool. Yeah, and yet we're just so tempted because that anxiety and everything about getting them, on track and caught up and all these things. And there we leave that out. And
right.
So
because we don't want to waste time, right?
Right.
Yeah,
but
we want to make sure
we are kind of wasting time.
it's so frustrating because I think of a lot of it like with sports, like if your child really needs to work on those free throws or whatever it is. And so what do? You spend all this time on free throws and you're doing the free throws constantly. But if you took one day and did some push-ups, or if you took one day and did some jumping jacks, you did something else that strengthens the ability to do the free throw. And that's what foreign language is like. It's like adding in that stretching, those calisthenics, the fundamentals, and then everything else, reading, writing, executive functioning, memory, wit, everything else improves. But all you did was spend time on saying what you like and don't like in Spanish. It's so simple.
That is, yes, but so counterintuitive, and
yes.
It's just not how we teach anymore. And because it used to be about, we didn't compartmentalize learning so much as what we do now. It's so compartmentalized, and we think that if we don't teach in this one area, then of course it's gonna be a detriment to that child. And I've heard. Yes. I would just cringe when I was on the phone with some parents and they're like, I removed everything else from their curriculum except this one subject. And it just made me just, go, don't do that to the parent, because, you're suffocating your child now by just teaching the one thing that they struggle with. And then just their whole composure about, I am a bad learner, and it all compiles on top of itself. So yes, I love that we're having this conversation right before Christmas, because I think parents, if you're listening to this and go, you know what, I think we've been doing what they're telling us not to do. Change things up, take some time over the Christmas break and have some fun, and then try to figure out how you can incorporate this fun and some additional ways of learning starting in January. And it's okay. It's where you started. So I would love for you to just share any practical tips or ways that parents could incorporate a second language into their homeschool routines, that if they feel like maybe, I don't know where we even have time for something like that.
Right. So I would just help everybody to take a step back and recognize that one word is one word. So let's do it now, right? So to make it super practical, you can see here's el pan, el pan. And so you're going to hear it and say it. So anytime you see anything in your house, focus on nouns first. Don't focus on manners or greetings or answering where are you from. Nobody, I have literally never asked any of my children where are they from, but that's something that, all the yet, maybe I'll do it next week, but that's something that so many Spanish curriculums start with is greetings and how to make friends.
Yes. I always thought that was so confusing when I took Spanish in high school.
Right, because you're not going to use that. And so you want to think about, okay, what is my child's favorite food? Food is always a connector, right? So if you have kids that really like pan, the next time you say it, just say el pan. We do have the Spanish and the English on the other side, and as well as the phonetic spelling, but we really want to focus on just hearing the word and saying it. And that's what See It and Say It does, is you listen to it. So start with nouns and start with one word. The next time you go to see that word or to see that item, you're like getting the bread out, you're ready to make a sandwich, your brain's going to go, what was that? El pan. And so that little pause is going to help awaken some synapses.
Okay.
And then not only are your synapses going to fire in a different direction, so now you kind of have shortcuts that weren't there before, but it also increases the capacity for memory. So it's kind of like making a room bigger as well as the path to it. So if you think, well, I didn't use Spanish, I went to high school, I learned Spanish, but I've never used it, I've been fine without it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about now. Do you want brain health now? Do you want better recall now? Do you want your memory to be better now? Do you want better executive functioning? So as an adult, I would like to really challenge you that it's not just for your children. This brain health is for all ages. And of course, it will help you like the normal way, right? Oh, now I can speak to more people. I can help people that are in need, things like that. But the brain health, it can give you 10 more years without dementia. Like if you're going to get dementia, we don't know,
and that's a huge concern
that.
for adults now that they're going, how do I avoid this? And so that's a great tip. Absolutely.
Yeah, so you can get a decade more.
Improve. Yes.
So that would be my main tip is focus on nouns first. And the reason is because your brain is already hardwired as a baby. Your mama taught you nouns before she taught you verbs or greetings or anything else. She would say book, bunny, kitty, birdie, and then you would respond by, smiling about it. I like it. Do you like it? Do you want it? And so that's how this is. So, do you like that little kid that learned how to say me gusta el pan? And so now you can change this word out for all kinds of things. If you want to say, I don't like it, you say no me gusta, but we don't teach that for a while.
Especially if you have toddlers.
Yes. We don't teach no for a long time. But just starting with really simple things. And like we just did, one word, it takes 5 seconds. You can put it like I have it in front of me is I have it on a little stand. And so if you have like one of those menu holders, it's just like a little, you can get these
I've
so
got
many
one
places.
For a knife on my counter. So
there you go.
Great.
So stick your flashcard in there. My kids actually send me messages. They'll put like different phrases up here and they'll change it out. They want to say something, they put it on the stand. So keep it around you and start with one word. Once you get that one word, then add another. It does not don't go, I'm going to be fluent in 5 days. No, you're not. Start with one word.
Yeah, that's great. And it's a super easy way to incorporate it into what you're already doing so you don't feel like you're taxed and adding other things. So it's, I think we have to be all in or not at all instead of incorporating small little changes that will then add up as you use them more and more again. What about specific learning styles? And I know a lot of times we talk about multisensory approaches to learning. And so for a child who really needs to be tactile or kinesthetic, what are some ways that we can incorporate a language? Because oftentimes we think of it as auditory.
Right. So I would make sure if you have a tactile learner, keep them off of screens. The screen is a real detriment, not only to the brain in general, but it actually closes down the language developmental part of your brain. So back when you and I had toddlers, remember they would tell us 30 minutes of TV a day, right? Max.
Exactly.
For toddlers. And that was because it would delay their speech. And that was 20 years ago, right? And now you can't tell that to parents because nobody knows how to function if their toddler doesn't have the iPad in front of them. Yes. But it's still true. The kids haven't changed. So the developmental part of your brain for languages completely goes dark. Even right now, can we learn while we're sitting in front of a screen? Yeah, Peggy and I can learn. We could teach you the other stuff, but our brain is now doing an obstacle course trying to figure out how do I absorb that information. As adults, if you've ever tried to watch a meeting and you're like, gosh, you're getting really sleepy. That's because the part of the brain that is language development is dark. It is not fired up. So we learn much better from something on a piece of paper, from face to face. Peggy and I would be doing much better if we were sitting here, but then we wouldn't be able to help everybody.
We will continue this conversation after a short break.
We're all touched by the mental health crisis, and many in our church communities are seeking support. We need compassionate Christian therapists walking alongside them through every season. Western Theological Seminary offers a master's in clinical mental health counseling, blending trauma-informed care with the rich tradition of soul care. Be part of the solution, grounded in faith. Learn more at counseling.westernsem.edu. That's counseling.westernsem.edu.
This is Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by SPED Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.
That's why we provide a transcript of this. So if you've ever felt like I need a transcript of the broadcast, the week after when the podcast comes out, if you go to spedhomeschool.com and Homeschool Heroes, we actually have the transcript with the video and the podcast. So you can get all that information in one place. So yeah, because we had lots of requests for that. People are like, I just need to be able to follow along.
Yes, that's awesome. And also another way to overcome that is like, I'm not saying screens are the devil. I'm just saying you want to add something to it. So if you just have a notepad next to you, so as you're listening, or if you're hearing a word in Spanish and you doodle it, you draw the picture of the apple, you draw the picture of the loaf of bread, that will wake up that part of your brain that has been kind of diminished a little bit. So supplement, like if you say, oh, I just bought this video program and that's all it is, that's okay. Supplement it with something else. Your tactile learner, have them draw their own flashcards. So they're going to draw a picture on one side. Don't have them write it. If you can write it, but write it on the back. So we don't typically think in words. We typically think in pictures. Right. And so we want to try and help our brain to grab the new language, me gusta, me gusta. And so the next time you see a little kid in an orange shirt, you're going to be like, oh, he looks like the me gusta boy. And so it's like creating a kind of a path for you. And then that way you can, attach it to other things. So your tactile learners, flashcards are awesome. Charades are great. Drawing, doodling, all those types of things are great. For your visual learners, the photo works, of course.
Yes.
Sometimes our visual learners really like to read it. That's okay, but we just want them to always focus on this side. Just use this for reference. And then your audio learners, they are easy because they just hear it, repeat it, and they got it quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever incorporated any activities like body, like movement and things like that to help with learning as well?
Absolutely. So we're always acting things out. Whenever I have a child that has deaf parents, so she's hearing, but both of her parents are deaf. And so she would sign it in ASL while we're learning things. So you can always add your own hand signals. It does not have to be accurate ASL. So if we want to say el pan, I just use it, el pan, the bread, el pan, or comer, so to eat. So anything you're doing, me gusta, you can always add actions to it as simple or as complex as you want. And that will help the brain to grab it that much more.
Awesome. So, yes, I know when we memorize scripture verses, I would always do that with my kids because that's how I'm a kinesthetic learner. I have to be moving. And so I'm like, okay, if I'm going to try to memorize this, that means I'm up and moving. They're going to be up and moving too.
Yes. And I'm a visual learner. So I was just to do the first letter. I'll write the first letter on something and then my brain can grab the first letter and that will help it to be meaningful. So we tend to do what works for us, but just recognize that your kid is not a carbon copy of you. So try the other ways as well.
Exactly. We always think, well, that one child that we have that's like us, they learn the best. Well,
yes,
we're teaching to them, not the rest of them.
That's a good point. That's true. You learn the best.
Oh, yes. We have those difficult ones that are like our husbands.
Yes. That's a good point as well. Yeah.
Yes. So.
And a lot of times the kinesthetic learner, you already know this, but for the learners, the others out there, just giving them some like permission to move, right? So I have my computer chair and just having permission to move and wiggle will help that.
Yes.
Also just clapping out the words, me gusta, el pan, just really simple. You could do fist, you can do snaps, anything that's like allowing them to touch. You can pretend to type it out on a pretend keyboard. So they're at the table and they're typing pretend letters. And that little tappity motion does something different than just hearing, repeating. And also the biggest thing, honest, and I know we're probably out of time just about, but the biggest thing is...
we've got a whole hour. So you keep going.
Hooray! I thought we only had 30 minutes. Well, that's wonderful because I have a lot more to share. But the biggest thing is making it meaningful. If you think about toddlers and when they were learning a language, they have an opinion. And so I like or I need is how we start with see it and say it. Me gusta or necesito. And the kid gets to decide, do I like it or do I need it? And so that opinion, that decision, that choice makes the second half of the sentence super important. And so then that's why they remember it, is because now it's meaningful. It's not just items in a pantry, colors on the wall. What's the weather like? I mean, these kids are sick to death of colors, numbers, and clothing. Give them something.
Exactly. Yeah. We get stuck in that perpetual kindergarten mode of just data entry, I think is what I would call it, into our kids. And we want the output. I mean, that really shows us what they know versus what we can feed into them with it before they give up. So I love that we do want them to synthesize it and give it to us from their perspective, because that really understands how much knowledge they have instead of just how much they can, keep in their bank until we walk away and then they forget it all.
Right. Yeah. And if they don't use it, I mean, we know if you don't use it, you lose it. Right. And so using it not only helps with the memory, but it also makes more space for other items and not just foreign language. Right. So once you start seeing that vocabulary go up and that usefulness, and they're excited about it, nobody's expecting them to know it. And so that surprise in somebody else's face goes, ooh, learning these interesting tidbits, this little bit of memory work that I'm doing now impressed others. People's face went up. And so that kind of snowballs into learning the science, the history, the reading, the math facts. That gives them that good endorphin instead of the poor kid that the mom took everything else away. Now the only thing he can do is fail. That's the only thing he can do.
Exactly. Yes.
So lots of ways to succeed.
Successes. Yes. Those successes just help with their own self-worth and, just how they perceive themselves from others' point of view, like you talked about. And that's huge. If they believe in themselves, they can take leaps and chances in other things that they may not have. They may just have shut down. And I think that happens a lot. If a child is, shut down in learning and maybe is very resistant about learning a second language. I'm assuming that, some of these more interactive ways that you were talking about would be great ways to even just start out relearning, learning instead of going that traditional approach of let's pull the books out.
Right.
Maybe let's just put all the books away and start with the foreign language, which may seem really counterintuitive, but, hearing everything that you've been talking about with just opening up other parts of the brain and helping their self-confidence and doing all these other things, that in the end, I could see this as actually launching them into better learning than if you would have just kept, it's time to start doing again what we did before. And really starting out with them mentally in the same place, which is not good.
Right. I think we just repeat what we did, right? So when we did Spanish or French or whatever foreign language we had, and even elementary, like some of the schools do it earlier now, which is great, but they start with colors, numbers, and clothing or school supplies, and it's just not super interesting for children. So if you have a kid that's kind of frustrated with the lists learning or that's just what they think Spanish is, like maybe they have a wrong attitude towards it because they've done it before, or they've heard you talk about it. Even as parents, we kind of give negative feedback for things we didn't enjoy in school. Right. Playing bingo is a great way because that way it's all just luck. So I actually have a zillion bingo games on the website. So we'll pretend like this is a bingo card. On the bingo card, it has the word as well as the picture. So it's actually a cartoon instead of a flashcard. And so now it's no longer like knowledge based, it's luck. So it totally takes the pressure off the kid. So if I say, okay, the first word is me gusta, they're looking on their card, they're trying to find the word that's me gusta, and they're like, wait, does that mean I like it? And you're like, yes. All they have to do is find it. They've got the hand-eye coordination. They pick it up and they flip it upside down. And so they've heard the word, they've recognized it, they've flipped it upside down. So you have the visual, the tactile, and the audio all happening, and it had nothing to do with their skill level, their ability, or their memory. And so it's huge to just kind of take that performance anxiety away from them. So that's a great way. And then what else are you talking about? Shutting down. I like to cook the bread. Me gusta cocinar. el pan. And so a kid might be like, oh, no, me gusta comer. I like to eat the bread. So the series model also helps, like the kids, that's like, they have a reaction, right? So I put together a sentence that can be moved. It's not on a piece of paper. It's
right.
Something
so they aren't forced to do any handwriting. They aren't forced to they can just pick and move things. That's so
they don't have to
easier.
read it. Yeah. So they're just identifying it. And like my little 3-year-old, she accidentally learned to read from these things because I constantly told her.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, please focus on the photo. I was like, just listen and learn. Because I already had 4 kids. I was just like, we're just doing Spanish at 3. Don't worry about it. Just listen and learn. Photo side only. And she has integrity issues at that point. So she kept flipping it over to read it. And so, I didn't know whether I should cheer or be upset, like follow instructions. But you'll see that because it's not a requirement, I'm not expecting you to read it. Kids at 3 and 4 years old are learning to read accidentally because of this simple, chunky kind of little bit of information, just one flashcard at a time.
Right. And it helps a little bit with the grammar because you've chunked the words together that usually go together and can be put together. So they don't have to think about that. It's just what makes sense and how would I respond to it. And if it doesn't sound like it's something I can respond to, then it probably needs to change. Right. So it's just that common sense way of interacting without having, forcing them to have too much on their plate. Right. That's awesome. Yeah.
And then we get to the adjective part, Oh, sorry.
Oh, no. Go. Yeah. Talk about that.
So, when we add the adjectives, they do go at the end, right? They go after the noun. And so I do explain all that in the curriculum. And so they learn that. But if they mess it up and they accidentally put the adjective here, there's no frustration because they're not having to scratch it out. They're not having to erase it. They're just moving the card. And so all those perfectionists, because a lot of struggling learners, that's why they struggle. They want it to be perfect before they ever put their pencil to the page. And so this removes that. It's just moving the cards around. There's nothing that's permanent about learning.
Yeah, that was a big struggle with my kids. And that's why they can't do a lot of online learning because a lot of those programs, if you are off like by not adding a 0 after a decimal place or something like that, or my daughter would just break down because it was so hard for her to deal with that she knew the right answer, but she put it in wrong. And then everything, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't the way she had mentally perceived that it was going in. So yes, something that is very flexible like that and very forgiving makes it so much easier to be able to accept that, oh, well, that was just a wrong place card. Then we just move it and life is good. Yeah. So yes. I love that. Yeah. And I think that's a very good way because we kind of started this part of this conversation talking about shutdown learners. And I think that a lot of kids who are shutdown learners, they are those perfectionists or they failed so many times that they're afraid to fail again because it just kind of, it eats away at them and at a certain point, you just don't want to do something that you keep failing at or you feel like you keep failing at. And so to have those successes and to have that flexibility makes it so much more fun. So let's talk a little bit about fun. Okay. And adding fun to learning and just how you do that with your own curriculum and how you've seen students respond to making things a little more fun versus, well, this is serious and we've got to learn all this stuff.
So I think the main thing is because there is a manual that goes along with it. So you have the manual that teaches you, which lessons to do and everything like that. It has it all listed for us, kind of the type A type people that really want to know exactly what's coming. You have it written out here and the transcript is actually, read to you. So everything that's in the book is on the audio. So you could just not read the reference book at all and just listen along. That already goes, oh, there's no textbook for the kids. No, there's no textbook for the kids. The kids have the flashcards, they're listening and they're touching. So laying a card out on the table and just hearing it and touching it and repeating it is the first start. For the perfectionist kids, what I give them is something to touch it with. So they can use a ruler, they can use a fly swatter, they can use a pencil, those sticky hands. If they're like,
oh yeah,
anything that's not, not your finger, that's okay too. So that's a fun way. And then of course we can act it out. There's speed rounds. And then I think the biggest thing for our perfectionist learners is being worried about how they sound. Like a lot of times they don't want to speak.
Yes. Right.
Because they're not sure they're going to say it exactly right. So what you do with them is, let's see if I have one. I don't have one. I have googly eyes on the website. And so you put them on your fingers and you can actually say whatever it is with your hand, so you got the little googly eyes.
Or like a puppet or something like that.
Kind of like a puppet, right.
Yes.
So even if you don't have that, you're like, well, I don't have that. Use an old sock, right? Put a sock on your hand. And just do that. You can use any kind of little anything, Me gusta.
I love that.
Me gusta. And so they just having a voice, like change your voice, go higher, deeper, growl, whatever you want to do, that it's no longer you. And you can even hide. Like I would even have students that would go down below the desk and hold it up high. Me gusta. And so taking that pressure off the face helps them to now speak. So, and it really helps if you'll do the voice. If you'll be funny first,
yes,
the kid will relax.
Yeah, I found that even with like when my kids wouldn't talk about their feelings, we always had puppets. I had one especially that was, really struggling through some stuff, and we got this one puppet, and he would just open up when the puppet was in his hand. And I'm like, what's going on here? But it takes the pressure off. It feels like that I am not being focused on and all the attention isn't at me, but I can share and I feel a little safer. So parents, if you're really struggling with a child that has that perfectionism, or they're just dealing with some deep things, that is some great advice that Suzanne just shared with you about that. Yes, I love that.
Yeah, because you can just look over at the hand, even if you just let your hand talk. So now the child is looking at the hand, you might be looking at the child's face, and that's fine because the child's no longer required to make eye contact. I mean, how many times do we look at these little boys and say, look me in the eye? And that's the one thing they can't do, and tell you the truth and admit that they messed up. And so we want them to fess up, tell us what they did wrong, and also look us in the eye. My goodness. I mean, they're 8. So let them focus on something else. And same with learning anything. Once you take the spotlight off of their face, they're able to perform and show you what they know.
Yes, that is so true. And just a gentle way of parenting, of homeschooling, that I think we've forgotten about, that because we have so much. We put so much stress on our kids, stress that we put on our own selves that we probably shouldn't either. I know we shouldn't. And it snowballs, and it snowballs actually our goals that we have for that child, because we allow that to come into just how we teach, instead of just relaxing and enjoying it and, meeting them where they're at, which is so important.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just we can't help but repeat what we experienced. It's just, it's the norm, it's familiar. And so when I think about homeschooling in general, if we can just avoid the trauma that we had at whatever subject, whatever teacher, whatever one event, if we can just avoid that, then that's stellar already. Absolutely. Even if they're not cold. Like I was always cold in school. I was freezing all the time. And so I love that my children are not cold while they learn. I love that.
Yes. And you have the opportunity to give them blankets and lots of other things you probably didn't have in a cold classroom environment.
Yeah. You would be crazy if you wore a jacket in Texas in an elementary school. You were crazy. You wouldn't wear a jacket, but it was so cold. These small things, that really affects our learning. If we can simply avoid that part, we're doing a great job. We're giving them better than what we had, that's all we can do, right? Right.
And I think that brings up something I hadn't even, thought of as part of this conversation, but I'd love to chat about just a second, is that we as parents don't often think about those things that determine how we teach. because of those past experiences. We don't even evaluate it. We don't even know why we do what we do. That would be a great thing as just a home educator, parent, to maybe take a step back this holiday season and say, why are we doing what we're doing? I'm sure you've done that multiple times in your homeschooling years, Suzanne. What changed over the years for you as you've homeschooled 20 years plus?
I think the biggest was listening to my mentor. So I think if you're a younger mom or you have elementary kids, find somebody that's 10 to 15 years older than you that you like, and just ask her what advice she would have for you. Hang out with her, watch her. There's so much freedom from somebody that's a decade beyond where you are. And so that was my biggest thing. My mentor, Julie, she had 6 kids. Her youngest children were older than my oldest child, right? And so she helped me to see. In fact, she's the one that pointed out the visual processing disorder of our second son, because she's like, Suzanne, he's really smart and he knows phonics. Something else is going on. And I did not want that to be true. I was like, no, he's fine. But we had him tested, and sure enough, it was huge. And then just 6 months to a year of therapy, and it worked out, like all this therapy stuff. So I think the biggest things that changed is why, like you said, why do we have to start at 8 a.m.? And I was like,
yes,
I could not. I was like, I don't know.
But you wouldn't have even thought about that had somebody not pointed it out to you.
Right.
Absolutely.
And why this, and why there's constantly ask why. Why am I teaching math this way? Why are we teaching it where we are? Like the kids were like, could we do literature outside? I was like, no. And they're of course like, why, Mama? I was like, I don't know.
Don't get mad at them when they ask that question.
Right.
Just be thankful. Yes.
Yeah. Do I have a reason? And so now, even now, today I did literature with my junior and my senior in high school. We're reading Chuck Colson's autobiography, and we're out by the fire. And that's where we still do literature to this day. And I think Audie, who's just 18 now, I think he was 4 when he asked that question. Why can't we read outside? And what a blessing. What a wonderful thing to embrace the freedom of, we are no longer on a conveyor belt. The conveyor belt is not terrible. It's just they have to have a conveyor belt because they have so many, cogs in the wheels. They have to do it that way. I had to do it that way when I taught public school. I'm not on the conveyor belt. Embrace your freedom. There's a lot of freedom.
Absolutely. Yes. So true. Well, Suzanne, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your program. Suzanne has so many resources, so I want her to share with us some information. And she used a lot of visuals in today's broadcast. So if you're listening to the podcast, definitely you want to check out the YouTube video, at least parts of it. You can either pick that up on YouTube, Facebook, on our pages. There'll be some reels coming out after the podcast as well. So those are things to look into as well for seeing what she was sharing as far as the cards, if you're interested in those. But talk a little bit about your website, flipflopspanish.com, and what people can find on there.
So I always forget about that. I am super visual, like I said, so I'm always showing people everything, and instead of just saying it. But that's why it's called See It and Say It, because that's how you learned your first language. You saw an item, your mom said it to you, so your brain is already hardwired. If you're doing it any other way, you're kind of trying to make your brain do something that it's not used to doing. So it's a good idea to try and say, okay, what can I look at? Not the word, not the written word, but what can I look at that I can identify? And then, so this is cocinar, to cook, cocinar. And so I'm holding up another photo, y'all, another flashcard. Also recognizing that it's a photo and not a drawn cartoon of some sort. So when your mama was talking to you in the crib, she held up the actual bottle of milk or the apple or the bread. She didn't hold up a cartoon. Especially for struggling learners, if they have a visual issue or context or any kind of little difference the way they are, if you show them a cartoon, they're going to give you an opinion on the artist that drew that. Like, they're going to be like, that
right, exactly.
why is it that color? Blah, blah, blah. But if you give a photo, it removes all those questions and those attitudes. It's just, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So learning a language is a lot about removing obstacles. And once you do that in the language portion, you're going to see ways to do that in all the other subjects. So see it and say it. You lay out the flashcards, you push play on the audio, and it talks you through the whole 2 years of curriculum from ages 3 all the way to 93. Anybody can learn. The lessons are like 15 minutes. And then when you're ready for high school Spanish, you're like, well, I want the credentials. I really need that high school credit. We have SpanishGDCs.com where I do it more at a scholar level. You're still the same method, but you're reading you're reading the stories, you're listening, and you're conversing at a higher level.
That's awesome. So yes, and I will include the hyperlink in the show notes so you don't have to try to spell anything or figure out what I said. But if you are listening and want to write it down right now, it is flipflopspanish.com. And I even say, like your cards, they're very inexpensive. If parents just want to start out, it's like what we were talking about earlier, and just get a set of cards and use them to help their students, learn some alternative words. I think when we talked years ago, I remember you talking about how when a child had to do something that was typical, that it was much more exciting if you used different words, like a Spanish word in there. And that always stuck with me that, oh yeah, we can make things more exciting instead of this is something we do every day, put your shoes away.
Right.
So let's just call, the shoes their Spanish version and, just change it up a little bit. And that it makes a huge difference. It just adding that variety into their lives. And it just makes things more exciting. It's like when you hear somebody speaking in a foreign, accent, or it sounds so cool. Yeah. Variety is huge. And it does, like you said, it just adds a little spice to your life. If you really wanted to do just one word a day, we do have a calendar even. You can hang it on the wall, and it's a calendar, 1 word a day. You get to doodle and label the thing in the picture at the top, and it comes with audio. I would never do that to you. You always have audio, so you can hear the word, identify it, and you're like, hey, we learned 1 word today, and you don't have to find it. It just stays on the wall. So if you're looking for something like that, say, Suzanne, I'm not ready for a full 2-year curriculum, but I hear what you're saying. I think I could do 1 word a day. Then we have 2 different levels of the Spanish Fun Activity Calendar. I just don't want you to be scared. Try it and embrace it. If you need more help, email, message, Facebook me. I love this stuff. You're never going to annoy me. I want to help. Yeah. And yes, and that's something we always encourage. I think I have, various curriculum people on, and I think I've been talking more and more in the past couple of years since I've been dealing more with curriculum creators. I just encourage our parents, call these people, email them, because they truly want to help you. If you're struggling with teaching something that they wrote, let them know. They probably have a solution for you, but you're not going to figure out what it is until you ask them. So reach out, because that's instead of just saying, well, this isn't working. I think we do that too often and too early. And instead of really figuring out, if you fell in love with the curriculum, there's a reason you did. And so ask. The worst thing they can say is, I don't know. Right. But maybe you've also encouraged them to add something to their curriculum that they hadn't really realized was necessary as well. Or like the family you shared the story about, Suzanne, what if that mom just never told you? It would not have impacted your outreach and how you felt your curriculum could be used even. And so those interactions are so important, and we've got to keep them going.
Yes, I totally agree. Awesome. Yeah, we want to help. Otherwise, we wouldn't have done it. We're not in it for the money, y'all. We want to help. If something, seriously, if something like this already had existed, I would have just taught my little Spanish classes, followed the lesson plan, and done it. But the reason it exists is because everything that was out there didn't really work for homeschoolers. It worked in a public school when you see the kids 45 minutes a day, every single day. And even then, y'all, that curriculum was not good. I mean, we just were, we had to follow it because that's what the school district had. But now I actually have schools using See It and Say It. Because why? Because it works better. Because it's the way you learned your first language. So, we want to help. Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Suzanne, just for the work that you do and the dedication that you've had in the homeschool community for so many years. I know it's hard to continue to keep just doing it as it really is a ministry. A lot of us in the homeschooling, like you said, it's not like you're getting money from the public schools.
Right.
And most homeschooling families are one income. And, we as providers into the homeschooling community, we can, the same as our nonprofit and we consider that, and we understand. We've been there, homeschooling our own kids. We know what it's like. And so we're not, it truly is a ministry. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
So I appreciate your dedication and just all that you do. And I know you do a lot in your local community too, and not just with your curriculum, your Spanish curriculum. So I appreciate that. And all that you do to pour into families and kids. I'm sure it's affected your community a lot.
Thank you. I mean, we've learned so much from being in one community for a long time really helps in a lot of ways. It's such a blessing, and it's something that you can't always choose. So I'm really grateful that we have been in the same place since my first kid was born all the way till now. We've been in the same community, and what a blessing that they've poured into me as I was growing with those 5 kids. And now I get to I have grand students, it's amazing. I have students that have gotten married,
so cool.
have children, and I have their tiny little children in my classes now. It's phenomenal.
Wow.
So I recommend finding at least one mom that is older than you and just asking and just being teachable and recognizing that you don't know everything. And, a lot of us think, well, if it was a good idea, I would have already had it. And that's not the case. Be open to people offering solutions to problems that you don't even see. There's some problems that you don't see as a mom because we kind of got a little blind spot. So super grateful for Peggy and and other people seeing what your children can do and maybe some of the needs they have that they need help with. So we're in this together, and asking questions is always a great way to learn, isn't it?
It is. Yes, absolutely. I learn something new on this show every week, and I'm done homeschooling, but it doesn't mean that I can't stop learning. So, I love being here to help and, ask questions that help you all homeschool better. So that's why we're here. But I'd like to do a little plug for our, so on Thursday of this week, if you're listening live, if you're on the podcast, this is already over. Sorry. I talked about it a little bit last week, but we have a holiday cheer and learn party that's coming up Thursday. It is free. We'd love for you to register. If you go to our website at spedhomeschool.com and you look up at upcoming, you'll see either from our calendar or our workshops page, but we have a incredible lineup of people. We're going to, Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT is going to do some baking with us, holiday baking, and teach motor skills, fine motor, gross motor skills through baking. And then we're going to do a multi-sensory Christmas reading lesson with Don Jackson. Steve Demi's coming on for a Christmas devotional. I'm going to be leading a fitness break. And then Right Start Math is coming on with a holiday math game, and Simply Charlotte Mason's going to do a picture study with us. And then we have an interactive Christmas history lesson with John Knotgrass from Knotgrass History. Carol Brown from Equipping Minds is going to be on for some brain training games. And then we have a craft with Annie Yorty. And then Rainbow Resources popping on to do some Mad Libs, Christmas Mad Libs for that. And then Leilani Melendez, one of my other co-hosts, will be on to do a holiday activity as well. We've got some giveaways and discounts. So it is going to be one fun, packed morning. So
I love all those people.
Join us.
I am for sure going to be there. I love all those people.
Yes,
it's amazing.
It is going to be lots and lots of fun. So I'm super excited about that. We do this once a quarter. We did it as a kickoff event, and we had lots of people interacting on that. So our next one will be in the spring. So if you missed this one, just be watching for our spring activity, and then we'll have one later on in the summer, or as kind of a summer kickoff. So, but that's our goal, is to get those. And plus, what another great announcement that we have coming up as of January 1st, we are going to be starting to offer one-on-one consultations.
Wow.
So we have a whole team of consultants that we will be working with us. And so if you have any needs, you can come in. If you're associated with the state organization that's going to partner with us, you'll be able to get a discount on those as well. So those are some things we have coming up in January that we're super excited about, since HSLDA, the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, dropped that perk from their memberships. So we had a lot of very large donors come up and say, we want this program to happen. So I was able to bring on a full-time person to start that program. And so that has been because of their generous gifts. It is nothing that I've done.
Wow.
We're just very excited that we're going to be able to do that for you. And also we have a new cognitive test that we're going to be able to offer to at a very reasonable rate. And it's what this test does. It doesn't test where your child struggles, but it's going to tell you where your child excels. And so if you're like, how do I teach my child? How do I, teach to where they're gifted? Because every child is gifted. They have certain things that they're very good at. And so this test actually pinpoints those, and it gives you ideas on how to teach to that child. And then if you want a follow-up consultation with one of our consultants, kind of dig through that, that will be available for you as well. So those are some huge things we have coming up, and we are just over the moon excited that we can help you this way. So yeah, lots going on, but it's things that I have dreamed about for years and just
That's
can't
amazing.
wait.
Yeah, what a blessing.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful, wonderful resource. I know so many moms that need that, but they don't know where to reach. So I will definitely be sharing that with all of my people. And I saw you sent out the email about everything happening on Thursday. Will that email send out again before Thursday, like a newsletter?
We'll send out another one with the updates. Yes.
Okay, because I'm going to send it to all my people, say, hey, you need to sign up for this newsletter so you can see, because I saw that list of stuff and I went, oh my goodness.
Right.
So,
and then every month we send out an update from all of our partners with special deals too. So if they're on our email list, all of our partners put in, like, this is the discount we're offering. So like Simply Charlotte Mason and Rainbow Resource and Knotgrass History, and all of them will give us whatever they have discounts on for the month. So you don't have to search for them. You don't have to go to their websites. You're like, oh, right there on this email, I got it all.
Golly, so many resources. What a wonderful service you have. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Suzanne. Make sure you visit Suzanne's website at flipflopspanish.com. And we appreciate you just tuning in with us today on the show. Next week is our last broadcast for this year. So that broadcast live will come out next week. But we, the podcast actually won't come out till the following year. And it's going to be on Restoring Joy, a biblical approach to bullies, forgiveness, and healing. So if you have a child that's dealing with trauma, or you just want to get more information on how to prepare for that, it's something our family went through. I didn't even realize until I had an adult child that experienced trauma, and it has crushed our family. So you just never know when it's going to hit. So it's just some good information to have. But I'm excited to have our guest on to talk about that, and just offer some help and some healing and some restorative joy into the season. So tune in for that, either live next week on a broadcast or on the podcast the first week of January. So well, thanks again, Suzanne. Appreciate your time and love all you shared, and blessings over your holidays, and same for you. Everybody, we'll see you again here next week on Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Till then, bye everybody, and God bless. I want to take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Scott. As a servant of God, wife, and mother of 4, I understand the juggle of multiple roles and stages. That's why I created the Encourager podcast to help guide us through the messy middle stage of life. Join me on the Encourager as we challenge the chaos and embrace harmony. Together, we'll create practical systems to balance your roles and fulfill priorities. And we will do it while having joy and energy for both home and work life. Tune in for inspiring stories and interviews, actionable tips, and methods to do both home and work life. Because here, we believe you can do all things, just not all at once.